Well, I mean, first of all, talk to me about the project that you're doing here because it seems to be a much larger than just, oh, I'm popping and taking some photos. Talk to me a little bit
Absolutely. So I've been taking pictures for 30 years, and I'm known as a fashion photographer and a portrait photographer. And I photographed some of the most famous people in the world, from Taylor Swift to Tyra Banks and many people in between, Hilary Swank and all kinds of big celebrities. And I think when I was first asked about this project, several people said to me, "But this is such a step away from what you normally do." And I'm like, yeah, but what I'm most interested in is people's stories, is the narrative behind the photograph. And no matter who I'm photographing, at that moment, it's regardless of their celebrity or fame, it's about their story. So you have to kind of crack that facade to get a great shot. And it's not that easy, but the interesting thing here is when you shoot sort of elderly people or seniors, they've got a huge story. They have a massive lifetime, and they're also not intimidated in the sort of the same way as often a young person might be. And whereas one may think, well, the beauty is in youth. Actually, the beauty is in the story and the history. And time again, everybody I photographed for this whole project for Monarch Communities is that they have unbelievable stories. I just photographed a man who was 100 years old, and just standing up, chatting with me, talking about his life, all the places that he's been, the things that he's done, the countries that he's been to, his children, the different presidents that he's seen, and referencing them in a way that puts everything in perspective. And I think that we live in a time where we've sort of lost perspective in many ways, and that yet at the same time, culturally we sort of think of our elderly as we don't put them on the pedestal that I believe we should. And if you look currently right now, we have a president who's basically 80. And we have a potential presidential candidate who is also almost 80. Clearly our elderly and our seniors are quite capable of being in running countries, if nothing else. So the fact that we don't listen to them more and tell their stories more is a big part of it. So this is one of many Monarch communities that I've been to, and obviously now here at Monarch Southbury, and we are capturing their stories by having them fill out questionnaires and writing about who they are. And then I'm capturing them in black and white in a very sort of graphic sort of style with a lot of storytelling. And I talk to them throughout the photo shoot and ask them lots of questions, and it's to evoke as much emotion from them as possible. And they, I've had them tell me poems, read poetry that they've written, tell me about their lives. Some of them are in new relationships that they've found here, so they're still out there dating and flirting and just as alive as any of us are at any point in our lives. And so I think culturally we often don't think of that, or we don't want to think of that, but it's kind of exciting to know that this is another chapter. It's not necessarily the last chapter.
Now, where will these be shown? Like, are you thinking in terms of like websites, museums, books?
A combination of all that. So first of all, it's going to be in an exhibition of photographs. So we're going to blow up our favorites in a very large format way, and they're going to be exhibited at the various properties, and it's also going to be on social media, on the website, and potentially in a book. But what we'd like to do is have them highlighted in some of the residences so people can actually see them on the walls, and invite people in from the public to be a part of that process. And actually I've been posting it on my social media, and I first of all was wondering like what people are going to say, because it's such a sort of a different thing. At one moment I'm sort of shooting America's Next Top Model or something like that, and the next minute I'm shooting someone who's 95 years old. And why? And they're not a celebrity, you never heard of them before. But the stories are so fantastic, and the picture and the gravitas in the image is so strong that they actually have more presence than a Hollywood celebrity, staring the camera down, because they have nothing to lose and everything to tell. And they look at me with 100% confidence. They give me about 2 minutes of their time, so they act like a celebrity. I'm only, it's like, are we not done yet? How many pictures must you take? That kind of thing. And I'm like, so I really work hard. It's been a really beautiful process, and the reaction on my social media has been incredible. People love it. and people are asking me to do this now all over the country.
Now, I mean, I'm going to guess that there's something that kind of elevates a portrait from your simple, like, high school yearbook to art. I mean, for you, what is the essence of portrait that kind of reaches the point of where it's art? Because it seems as if that's what you're aiming for.
It's about the story, and so therefore that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of conversation in the way I shoot, because as soon as someone glazes off and they're just standing in front of my camera, it's like I've just taken a picture of you. But what I'm trying to do is capture who you are, and therefore you have to be engaged in that moment. And so it can be off-putting, but my style is that I'm constantly talking to my subject, and if I don't, it's for a reason. There's something happening at that moment, like they are, you can see they're in the moment, and so you want to let them stay there. But if they're not, I'll ask them everything about who they are, where they are, what they love, their lives, their family, who they're in love with, their children, and I'll ask impertinent questions. And it helps create that reaction and brings that person out of themselves. And time and time again, we've had people I photograph the people who work here, thank you, Toby, will say to me, God, I haven't seen him laugh in years, or it's so rare to see him smile, or that was a really beautiful moment that you caught. And I'm not afraid to sort of to ask people to just to try and get them to breathe and to be themselves in front of the camera. And it sounds easy enough, but almost anyone, you put them in front of a big camera and on an intimidating set, all of a sudden feels like, oh, like what's happening, So you have to be fast, you have to be quick, and actually having people around them who are familiar really helps. So.
Now, the impetus of the project is Monarch itself, and Southbury is part of that.
Exactly, it's one of the 6 properties
that
they have. So I've been to New Rochelle in New York, and also in the Boston area. They have properties up there called the Current, Beverly, and South Shore. And we are going to several other properties as well. One in Bellaterra, there's another one they have in New Jersey. And it was their idea to try and really utilize someone like myself. And I think too, it's interesting for them to do something like this, because what they wanted to do is to celebrate their residents in a way that hasn't been really done before, and to start telling their stories. And when I first heard about it, I'm like, okay, that could be interesting. That could be an interesting project. And I started to see their stories, and it was like a who's who of unbelievable stories. And just one gentleman we had in here today was talking about Joan Crawford and superstars of their time, and how he knows them, and how he used to hang out in Texas and Hollywood, and it sounds almost like make believe, but he's got the photographs to go with it and the whole thing, and you're like, unbelievable, these stories. And to lose that, and he has a really amazing ring on his finger that, and when I first saw him, I hadn't even seen his face. I saw his hand reach for the door, and I was sitting down over there, and I just saw this hand come round the corner, and his hat peeked in, and then he stepped back, and I'm like, whoever that is, I would like to photograph him. And I didn't even see his face yet, but he had such panache in the ring and the hat. And then when he came in, and he had poetry, he had lines. It was fantastic. I'm like, okay, you are such a character.
Now, you're learning obviously about your subjects. I mean, in a project like this, are you learning something about yourself? I mean, as you approach their generation as well, I mean, are you learning something about you, Nigel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, there's an element of photography that is therapeutic, and you can call it phototherapy even. But every time I meet someone and you talk to them, you learn a little bit about their lives and also about what's possible for yourself. And as I get older too, you tell your stories, and you're known for something that happens in your life. For me, for example, like America's Next Top Model, that'll get brought up probably throughout my entire life. But it is also a chapter of your life, and there are many chapters in any book. And as you write those chapters, you can be proactive in them, and you don't want your last chapters to be the worst parts of the book. It's sort of, if anything, it should be the culmination of everything you've learned. And that's one of the great things here. One of the guys I photographed is a gentleman called Roger Watson, and he's 100 years old, and he just joined a band, and he plays the drums. Right? So and people like that you're like, well, okay. And this other gentleman we met, he's just written a book, and he's actually just written the book, and it's on his life. Time and time again, I'm meeting people who are doing things for the first time, trying things out for the first time. And so it's not like I've done everything, I've seen it all, and now I'm just sitting in the corner watching television. It's like, no, I could be in a new relationship. I could have this other guy I just photographed who walked out of here. He's like, oh, this is my girlfriend. We've been together 7 months. And and he had his ears pierced, he had a little stud in his ear, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like, this guy's a rock star, So that's also really exciting to know that that there's so many chapters to life, and every chapter has its own. It can be defined how you want it to be.